Hello and welcome to the Anonkun Community Podcast. With us we have various people, and I'm not actually supposed to say that yet. And we are the premier source for quest-related podcasting. Hello and welcome. With us we have, first of all, Trick. How about you introduce yourself and give a short spiel about your quests?
Okay, hello, I'm Trick, or Trick QM. My main quest is Lost Island Quest, which is about a fantasy story where people get on an island and discover they have magic powers, based a lot on Pathfinder, the role-playing game, and the rest are kind of shit, so I'm done.
Well, going in like the opposite of the natural direction, let's continue with Mage here. Mage, what do you do? Tell us about yourself.
Well, I fail at being a QM, I guess. I run two quests on Akun. One is about knights killing Pokemon, and the other is about Academagia, a game that I love and that I want to see more of.
All right. And for our final guest, we have King Mutant.
I'm King Mutant. I did, for all of 2014 or going into all of 2015, I ran Mobile Suit Gundam, Another World, Another War. And then with 2016, I started my current quest, Neon Genesis Evangelion. I gotta fucking get the name right because it's Latin. Norma Evangelium Angeli. No, I fucked it up again. Norma Evangelium Angeli. Whatever. It's New Order of Angels in Latin. I can't even pronounce the name of my own fucking quest because I had to be pretentious. So in other words, it's the perfect Evangelion quest. It's
Garbage Hazard is also here, but nobody cares about him. Now, moving on. Anybody done something they enjoyed this week? Questing related or otherwise? Just throw that out there at the start.
I got a job, but no one cares.
What do they do? What do they do in Deutschland these days?
Well, I got a side job in a insane asylum. Basically, it's a renewal of the job I already had. I watch insane people for a living.
That's your hobby as well, though.
Kind of like Akun, but in the real world.
So, let's see.
Well, a new arcade opened up in my town, and I went there, and it's actually pretty.
Those
sweet.
exist?
It's Japanese owned. Yeah, it's like a Japanese game center, except I guess now they're branching out into the U.S. And it was weird because they had all of these arcade games just flat out imported from Japan, and like all sorts of stuff, like a bunch of rhythm games, Final Fantasy games. They had the Silent Hill arcade game, Capcom versus Marvel 2, or Marvel versus Capcom 2, which I tried and I suck at. But Raiden, Metal Slug, it was really cool, and I'm just amazed that it existed. And I'm actually really glad it exists.
So, let's get to the last and least important of all, everybody here, even less important to me. What have you been doing, Hazard?
Well, I got put on prescribed meds. That's about the most interesting thing that happened.
Finally!
Anything good?
No, just vitamin D. Apparently I'm like missing shit tons
lame.
of it.
How has that been affecting your primary hobby?
My primary hobby?
Shit posting.
Well, actually no, my primary hobby is in fact fruit masturbation. And I don't think I've been masturbating as much as I could with the level of vitamin D I had. So now that I'm on tablets, I think I can up it to maybe 4 times a day.
That's weak.
Well, I mean, we're talking about an average here. I'm aiming to shoot higher, at least on the weekends. And masturbate more too.
So what sort of material do you enjoy the most?
For masturbation? Oh god, where to start? Well, missing limbs is really good for me, but the problem is it has to be a very specific pattern of missing limbs. You can't be missing an like for say an entire leg up to the hip, because that looks a bit weird. Both legs at the knee down, that's all right. One arm entirely, both arms entirely, maybe.
That sounds fucking degenerate. Let's move on.
Why would you ask him that?
Well, I was like morbidly curious. Now,
I can answer whatever fucked up questions you have.
so, what our main topic for today is what makes people keep reading quests and what leads them away, and how is this separate from what makes them pissed off?
I mean, I guess I would say that if you get pissed off and it's aimed at other players, that'll keep you coming back a lot longer than if you're pissed off at the way the QM is running the quest. Because, I mean, if you're pissed off about railroading, eventually you're just going to stop playing the quest. If you're pissed off that the other players are making bad decisions, you're going to try to be more involved even.
I don't think so. I think that if you're pissed off the other players, that's something that will lead you to abandon a quest as well. I think if you're going to be pissed off, I think that being pissed off at the QM does build investment to an extent. It does keep you there. It does keep people there.
I think the best way would be if you're pissed off at other players, but the two groups that are pissed off at each other are roughly of the same number, so they can actually have a chance to influence decisions.
So, well, yeah, I mean, that builds investment, but does it really keep people interested? Well, yeah, it probably does, but
the best way that I've learned to retain viewers is waifu wars.
Yeah,
bunch of girls and all sorts of different flavors of girls, all sorts of flavors of love interests, and Anons will just climb over each other to just keep at it and keep going and make sure that their girl wins.
Nothing makes me drop a quest faster.
Questing.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that waifu wars, and the keeping the waifu war going, seems to help keep readers reading.
Honestly, for me, it's the opposite. If I see that the quest is gonna be heavy on the waifu wars, I enjoy it less because I know that, like, some quests do this. Every female character is a waifu. Every female character is pretty, and it's just nothing turns me away sooner.
I think one of the problems that I have mostly with like other players and that is when it comes to waifu wars quests, the worst thing people do is when they really heavily self-insert as the MC, because like I think there's a line that needs to be drawn between waifuing a character and then actually shipping the character with the main character.
Yeah.
Because when you can draw the line there and you can see which choice is best for the main character and not for you, that's usually when the quest ends up quite comfy because people just want these two characters to get together for the most part.
That's actually a good point. I'm surprised. Also, King, your taste is shit. Fuck you.
The worst thing though is if the QM self-inserts into the main character.
Oh, that's the fucking.
That's the end, basically.
I self-insert as every character.
I don't know. I mean, if the QM is going to self-insert any character, I'd rather it already be the main character rather than like a side character they try and force to become, a sort of a fun style thing. They sort of take over the quest.
Yeah, essentially a DMPC, right?
Maleficar makes a good point when he says, "Well, you prevent that by giving the MC a fucking personality," which is absolutely fucking true. Why the hell don't quests do this?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, you go.
I was gonna say, if my only self-insert for EvaQuest right now is the quest's adorable animal mascot, who's representative of me. He's a fucking tortoise.
You are not adorable.
But
no, I'm not adorable, but the turtle is. That's the one difference between us.
Like you've introduced a character that you're saying, this is me, the author, right?
Well, yeah, because I'm fucking slow, and so is the turtle. So that's the embed.
It's not the self-inserting we're really talking about, right?
I know. I was making a joke, but I feel like a good self-insert is It's just basically that. It's the QM just having a little bit of fun, making a fun little character.
That's called what's it called? It's like an author something.
Author avatar.
There's a difference between that and a self-insert.
Yeah.
But
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when it comes to like the topic of giving the MC a personality, I have an example for that. I used to read a quest called Dark Gate Academy that was run on the quest board. You ever hear of that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I played in that. Didn't run it. Did I say I run it? I don't know. I misspoke. It's quite late here. But the guy who ran that, Booker, a very good QM. I really liked him. He had a quest before that called Wrestle Quest or something like that, and the main character of that, Ace, he had no character whatsoever at the start, and that ended up to the whole quest burning down in the worst waifu wars I've ever seen in my entire life. But then when he ran DGA, the main character had a very clear-cut personality from the get-go, and that ended up being a good example of what I mentioned earlier about, distinction between shipping characters and waifu characters. So it really does help in quite a few ways.
Personally, I got lucky because I straight up ripped off Soma's character sheet, and it has a section about the character of the character. And yeah, that got me thinking about my main character, so I kind of avoided that dilemma.
Well, like I've said in basically every podcast, you gotta establish your character in pretty much the very first update. If you and you have to keep doing it all the time. You can't stop. You have to keep going, because not only are people more invested with a main character with a personality, they also behave in a smarter way. Like, they take better decisions. And yeah, come on, somebody speak.
Well, I was going to say, if you make a character and you give him too much personality, then there's no choice, and there's no point in having the players.
No, I mean,
there are a few options that, like, because the main character has that personality, there is a chance that they would do any one of these things.
There
has to be some room. You can't write yourself.
It's also there's also the question. I've discussed this before, and what you do is that in the first update, basically, you have very strongly emotionally loaded questions which establish a character quickly. You design your quest so the very first poll you put forward is something that's going to give your character personality. And that means that the players establish how the character is going to behave, and he has a strong personality, but he still has a strong personality.
So it's like forming the personality of the main character with the first vote?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, that's what...
do some care gen.
Like creating a kind of base to build up.
No care gen. Fuck you.
Well,
No,
I mean, it is character.
That's not what I mean, but
just advocated for something that is literally character generation. It's smart character generation, but that's what that is.
I mean, sure, maybe, but it's character generation rather than having a section separated from it. Like, the main narrative of the quest is the character generation. Like, you don't have a separate part. I mean, if you're going to have character generation, you should do it like formal character generation. You should have it like Banished Quest did, and have 2 questions. It's answered in the very first update, and the character's personality is established based on the answer to those 2 questions.
I gotta disagree, actually, because your proposal doesn't work around the problem of too strong a character not really leaving options for votes and choices. It just postpones that after the first choice.
Well, if you look at quests with really strong main characters, they often have a lot of choices. And it's just that people know how to resolve them. Once again, my example is Banished Quest, which has a very strongly established character, but because the setting is so open and there are so many options to do at any given point, there's still going to be large amounts of disagreements about what to do.
Well, yeah, but the character in Banished is very strongly established as batshit crazy.
Yes. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's part of what I'm saying. If you do it correctly, the character will be a character which the players will want to play as. They'll want to act like that character would act. And that's why Mikhail is a good character for a quest, in spite not being able to survive in any other medium, because his will is the will of his players.
Well, I think there's sort of like a counterpoint that's almost like the opposite of what Mage was saying about the too strong a character. Is almost like, if you're going to be kind of like creating the character's personality from the player choices, I mean, if you're going like just off the first question, then it's going to be very one-dimensional at first. So you're going to inevitably end up kind of building the personality up from other questions as it goes on, at least early on. But the problem with that is, while it can build up a very interesting character from it, you often end up with a bad case of early installment weirdness, where the characters aren't quite like they appear to be later on, where it's almost like this almost seems like a different person sometimes.
That is true. I mean, but the alternative is that players have no input at all, or that there will never be any character, because you don't continue to establish the character. Like, of course, some early actions aren't going to make sense, but actions will make more and more sense as things move on.
I mean, I agree that you have to establish the core character trait early and then build up smaller tidbits as you go along. That's just how you do it, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just give the players something in the very first update. It doesn't need to be finished or anything. They just need to see what sort of position do I have in the world, and they, to an extent, can establish that. And when they do, it works better in my experience.
Yeah, because I think that when you have a really strong personality for a main character, I feel like a lot of the prompts or a lot of the options is more of a what do you want to do as opposed to a how do you want to do a thing. Whereas when you have a character with less personality, you can give them options that are how do you want to go about viewing or handling a situation, because you have less guidelines by that character's like code of conduct, essentially.
Yeah, because the how is character building. If you decide how a character handles something, that impacts his personality. If you already have established a personality, I mean, obviously it's going to change. It should change. Character growth is important. But if you already have something, then you can just decide what you want to tackle, because you know how he's going to tackle a given thing.
I mean, should players really decide the emotional details of the character in that way? Well, I mean,
I would recommend against it just because they kind of make, I think someone said it earlier up there, like snarky diplomat. Like there's a few common character types that they glom onto making if they have the clay, essentially, to make whatever they want.
And you also get stuff like such defiance.
But isn't questing kind of about that, about shaping your character? I mean, if you really take away the option to influence the how, then you're just showcasing the world, basically. And while showcasing the world is important and can be the main source of interest, case in point, Banish Quest, I think that shaping the character with the other players is also part of questing, isn't it?
I think it is, but if there's no shaping a character, really, if you don't take actions into context, like if every action is taken in isolation, and like the emotional state of the protagonist is like decided moment for moment, you're not going to be shaping a character. You're going to be making a decision through the lens of like a physical body in that world.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying give them those options more frequently in the in the early stages of the quest, when the character is not really doesn't really have an established personality, apart from a few core traits that are should be established immediately, and then more and more give them choices that are the what. Start with the how, and then go into the what.
When you say there are some core like some core traits that should already be established pre-quest, what would you say those core things are?
Not pre-quest. I said after the first
No,
update.
I was talking to Mage.
I'm actually agreeing with. Well, I think some core traits should be like, if you're going to play an evil character, you should know that before you start the quest. If you're going to go play someone who goes around torturing kittens or something, you gotta set that up correctly.
You mean you should decide like the general direction of the quest and communicate that to your players.
The basic morality or lack thereof, yes.
I think that like one of the things that should be defined, like when the quest starts at least, is a backstory for the character if it's the sort of quest that would have one. Because a backstory can often lay down like an idea for the players of where to take the character. Because you can get the quest can present them with an opportunity of like, you know, make this character do these things in the world as they would, or try and change the character and develop their personality and actually create a character arc for them, which it's also kind of responsible. The QM is also kind of responsible for in the idea of like making the options they get change as they go to suit the player's choices. Like if the players start with like an evil character, but they keep pushing more and more to do good things, the QM starts by offering like slightly good things, and then it kind of shifts to actually better and better deeds the character can do.
Sure. I mean, you take decisions into like you take a direction from your players in order to see what way you go. I mean, that's one of the problems with write-in only, in my opinion, because you can't. The QM has like no ability to even advise their players unless they do it explicitly. With pre-written options, you can have like that gradual change where if someone starts in a really evil position, you can have a pre-written option which is slightly more evil than the position you are in generally right now, one which fits their current situation, and one which is less evil.
I think though, like it's good, but sorry, I don't know how I'm trying to make this point. I'm a bit tired.
Well, I mean, for that example,
you go, yeah.
After a while, if the players start obviously rejecting one option, like the good option or the get further evil option, it kind of makes sense that you would like phase that out and try something different and give them an option that they would actually consider voting for, instead of giving them the option to do something that they've consistently not voted for.
Yeah. The thing with this sort of system, it's one that should be applied. Definitely, it's a great thing for quests. But when it comes to the ending, like one of the problems you sort of come across, I'd imagine as a QM, because I haven't done that myself yet, is that when it comes to the ending, you have to decide like how much does the player choices up to that point affect the ending. Like, are you going to give them a sort of Mass Effect 3 style choice where it's like, do you want one of these endings or whatever, or are you going to have like how the players like built momentum up in certain directions limit their ending choices?
Well, no ending should be handled in the way that Mass Effect 3 did it, first of all.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is actually something I've thought about a lot, because basically when I set out to do an Evangelion quest, everybody knows about the end of Evangelion, not just the movie end of Evangelion, but just the way the series ended, the way the movie ended, the way 4.0 is probably going to end. Those are big shoes to fill, and so you have to kind of consider how is it going to end, and definitely you have to consider the fact that the players are obviously going to want a better end than what happened. Now, if that's possible, that's debatable, but I mean, so already you like, even in like the most minute decisions, players are still wondering, okay, how are we going to avoid an end of Evangelion style situation? This was something I had already considered a lot, because the quest that really got me into questing, and this is way back in like 2010 or like 2009, I think, when it started, was Xeon Quest on TG.
Yeah, I started around that time too.
Yeah, and the whole point was the players trying to get a better ending to the 1-year war, and they did, but just barely, because there were so many things that were out of their control. And they didn't make like all the perfect, correct decisions.
I seem to remember significant changes coming about as a result of the events of that
Oh yeah,
quest.
there were definitely significant changes. The big one, I believe, was all technology was produced 2 weeks in advance. Garmazabi survives, and I forget, there was one other major change in terms of the story.
Well, I mean the ultimate result of the war, obviously. That was a pretty big
where
change.
Xi'an is not conquered, and there's actually eventually the end of the war, but a peaceful transition of a 2-state solution.
I mean, I'm gonna have to admit that I haven't really thought about endings. Maybe because the quest that got me into questing was Banished Quest. And Banished Quest has always been about experiencing the world through the eyes of Mikael. And so my aim in writing quests is not really to tell a story, but to explore a world, and worlds don't end frequently.
Well, that's the same mentality I am prep writing for my quest, the quest I'm going to make soon. I'm having it. It's about like personal stories and what experiences will this person have in moving through
Sonichu quest?
world I create.
I'm gonna have to save that one for April Fools.
Well, how would you do that? I'm asking, what sort of mechanical ideas do you have for that quest?
Sonichu quest?
Yes, you said you were going to do it, so how are you going to do it?
Well, you would need a heart meter, or a love. I forget what he called it, like a heart meter or a love meter that goes up or down depending on your proximity to a boyfriend for a girl.
Would you be controlling the Sonichu himself, or would it be OC?
Well, that's the thing. You would start as controlling Sonichu, and then I would imagine, like, partway through, you would switch over to controlling Chris, much like the comic switches from Sonichu to Chris's electric hedgehog form. And I mean, you could cover a lot of fetishes too. You like,
oh god,
definitely you could get that gender swap quest that I know. Gender swap is still like a big thing on Akon, right? I'm sure people would love that.
For some reason, it is.
Wait, the fetish or like
the fetish? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, ignoring fucking. Oh god, no, I just remembered that picture. Ugh, of Chris's. Whatever. Anyway. It's a fucking fistula. Oh my god.
I think if you're going to run a Sonichu quest, you definitely need like an insanity meter for the players or something. Because that can't be too godly.
If you're playing it straight, yeah. Like if you're doing like something like Fear and Loathing or Quickville, or that one Sonichu fanfiction about like a normal person's reaction to Quickville, you could definitely do something like that.
There was a one-shot that came out that was like about sort of not Sonichu, but it was playing a power fantasy hedgehog character. It was run by like Chuckle's wife, and it was pretty good for a one-shot.
Oh, really?
I mean, it was totally tongue-in-cheek, but
are one-shots actually worse on average than long quests?
One-shots on average, I feel like, are better.
Yeah,
well, one-shots by definition would be better.
Start a one-shot if you want to tell a story and you want to tell it in one thread session, whatever. So you have a plan for your story. It's not just open-ended like the shit I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Depends on whether or not you have. When you mean one shot, you mean something that was planned to only be one thread, or something that was meant to be run for several dozen threads but was abandoned immediately.
Well, that's a stillbirth. That's not a one shot.
Yeah, I mean,
a misfire.
Yeah, whatever. A premature ejaculation, if you want.
Exactly. Unless you were like planning to write this like multi-thread quest, and then the players found a good ending for it in the first thread, and you were like, you know what, the quest ends there.
That would be pretty good, actually. I can't actually remember that ever happening.
I doubt it has, just because I don't think anyone who's planned like, yeah, I want this quest to last X amount of threads.
I mean, my favorite quest of all time was a one-shot which expanded to like 12 threads, eventually. And then he abandoned it because because Twen is a motherfucker. Fuck it.
Are you going to show sexual encounters again?
Yes, exactly.
Of course. I think the one that comes closest to potentially having that outcome was one quest I remember where something about meeting death, and then there was the option to kill death or something, and it had the DC of 100, and someone voted to kill it. And he rolled, and he got 100. So, yeah.
Didn't Darkgate Academy have an option to just take a bus and fuck off?
That
that was
amazing.
pretty early on. There was literally a point where the players could. I think it was in like episode 3 or 4 or something. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I looked at it. Because I stopped playing like really early on in season 2. But back in season 1, like episode 4, there was basically a point where like the characters were like fuck this shit and was trying to escape, and the players were like actually pushing for it until like at the end one of the other characters kind of came past and was like, don't do this, dickhead, and the players were pretty much convinced like, yeah, maybe this is a bad idea to just run off.
I mean,
it sounded really interesting.
I mean, it's the sort of thing which would naturally happen in the sort of manga, in a manga format it was inspired by. Like that's the sort of result you might see in a manga with like the main character deciding, I don't want to do this shit, fuck this, I'm out, and then being convinced to come back.
But that would actually have been an amazing opportunity with the
I would have
the quest ending for now, and then sometime later there comes a new session where I think it was a school trying to hold back some evil, and it fails, and then the MC has to survive in that world.
Yeah, maybe trying to fix the mistake or something like that. Yeah, but if it's alright to backpedal just for a moment, back on the topic of like one shots and comparing them to more full length, multiple thread stories, I think they're like, not only does the kind of thing you get with TV shows sort of apply to quests where it's like they run the risk of overstaying their welcome and just sort of becoming stale or dragging on too long to the point where the story feels too weak and inconclusive.
Or doing something stupid, right? Like just jumping the shark, essentially.
Yeah, jumping the shark, or even worse, if the quest just gets kind of boring because of how long it's going on, you run the risk of, more specific to quests as a medium, you run the risk of losing player base. Because if the player base starts running dry instead of gaining speed or staying stable, that's when your quest is just going to crash.
Not really. I mean, I've never. When it comes to,
the best way to fix that is to make sure something happens every single episode.
I mean, I've never actually seen a quest that has lost players to an extent that it cannot continue. I've never seen that happen.
I've always thought it was like a potential risk, at least.
I think the quests where that happens aren't really the quests that you know about. Those are the small unknown quests that are
more commonly. It happens where the QM loses interest because he's so bored by his own quest.
Yeah, exactly. That happens all the time. But I've never seen a quest which has so few players that it can't continue. And I used to read. There was like a 3 or 4 year period where I read every quest that was posted. Like,
wait, so when you say, what do you think is the like too little player base to continue?
Well,
I mean even 2 or 3 players is enough. I've seen quests survive for years on that player base.
Well, no, but I think the thing is, I didn't explain it well enough. Sorry, but I mean, it's not necessarily that like all the players drop off. It's that the player count can drop to such a point that the QM doesn't feel like the quest is, what it could be because of like the lack of players. Again, linking back to what someone said about like the QM losing interest, it's more about that, but not because the quest is boring, but simply because they don't feel like they've got the player base they could have to really make the quest what it could be.
Motivating to like post an update and you get like 1 vote. That's
yeah. No, that kills fucking motivation, especially if you had it before where you had like 8 votes.
Yeah,
20.
Didn't DMC mention something like that in like the first podcast ever, that he once had a quest where he had to call a friend because he couldn't get a single vote in the final thread? That's, I think, the point where you can just drop it. I mean, he said he finished it. But
I'd agree that's a bit too extreme.
Yeah, when you have 0 players and you're just saving face for literally no one, that's bad. But I mean, it's kind of happened to me a bit with Lost Island, where like there was a point like early on where I had like 10 players or some shit like that, and then eventually it just dropped to like 3, and I've been going on like 3 to 6 on like a really good day, and it fucking kills your motivation, especially when.
That's why QST was a bad idea. QST was a mistake.
No,
it
I
happens
wish,
on it happens
It
on
is a
Akun
fucking
too.
mistake.
Don't
here's the thing,
mistake.
I wish I could blame it on QST, but I can't.
No, but on Akun, it's slightly different because there's going to be some players which check out anything which is live.
Yeah, the live system is a good thing. I agree with
The
that.
live system saves it a bit, but I think it was a lot smaller problem on TG than it was on QST as well, because there's going to be people on TG, even if they're not there for a specific quest, they're going to be looking around, and they might see a quest which mildly interests them in the catalog. But on QST, if you're there, you're basically there for a specific purpose, or you're explicitly looking for new quests to read.
Yeah, like the major problem with QST, because I don't feel like QST was a mistaken concept. I felt like it was a good idea, but the problem was there was no real reason.
QST
to
was a
move there or use
mistake.
it.
There was no draw to QST. You go to
Yeah,
TG
exactly.
because you're interested in a thing that is vaguely similar to quests. Well, not vaguely, it's pretty similar to quests, actually.
But then, why
But-
does Anonkun work? Because it's the same thing. It's a thing where you only go there.
The
for
live
quests.
system.
So
And
live
it has
system
it has a stable base. Like there's a point in numbers where there's enough for it to continue.
You don't need to use like an out of sight archive to like store back episodes of your quest.
Yeah.
Like everything is just there. You don't have to worry about like threads disappearing. You can actually have like a useful appendix.
Well, you do have to worry about stuff disappearing.
We can just worry about stuff disappearing because of CAS code, not because of fucking the thread just 404s.
Well, we also have to worry about Anonkun 404ing forever.
That's
a sub. That's a subdivision of CAS code, I guess. CAS.
The CAS.
I mean, has Kaz ever like made it seem like he might shut down Anonkun?
Yeah.
No.
I
the
mean,
closest he got was when he tried to like fic dot whatever the
fiction.live.
Fiction.live thing that he tried, and he did that Reddit AMA.
Which isn't actually that bad a name, I gotta say.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, the name is pretty good, but just everybody thought he was going to like throw Akon under the bus and like get rid of all the NSFW quests, all the fetish quests, and
But
he's
he
just going to make
didn't,
it normally
because it
friendly.
That would be too large a loss for this world to handle.
Oh yeah, no, he wouldn't be able to handle it.
I think it would be interesting to see the Anonkun cast once. With like, he wanted to have like Tumblr teenage girls or something, he said at some point.
What? Well, yeah, because that makes sense. Those people will throw money at fucking anything. So
No, I mean, they also write a lot.
Yeah, the front page right now would be covered with nothing but like Sherlock boning quest, Supernatural boning quest, Doctor Who boning quest, Hannibal.
Yeah, and it would
boning
all be
quest.
gay shit.
A mix of
Not
boning
even
quests
good
and
shit, like
political
fucking Yuri
propaganda
on Ice
quests.
gay shit.
I mean, just look at fanfiction.net, and if you scroll, that's what it would be basically for fanfiction.net for quests.
This just reminds me that last night someone introduced me to Fallout Equestria, and I just, I deeply regret asking what the fuck is Fallout Equestria, because
You should.
oh my god, I'm so happier knowing that it didn't, like, not knowing that it existed, and now it's just like,
Why
Yeah,
do you
can't
care?
unknow something.
it's just offensively bad, because it's like you took the shittiest Fallout game of well, I guess the shittiest numbered Fallout game, Fallout 3, and then decided, okay, let's make it even
Second
worse by
shit,
adding
yeah.
ponies
Second
in.
shit, yes.
Fallout 4 was worse than Fallout 3. Don't kid
Well,
yourself.
Fallout 4 didn't
The
exist
only
at that
reason I
point.
say Fallout 3 is the worst because I've actually played Fallout 3 and I have no desire to play 4. So
And
Yeah, 4 is definitely worse. 3 is actually not that bad.
I
remember-
I
was
like the
4.
atmosphere of 3, I gotta say. Like, when you're wandering
What
down
atmosphere?
3
the
also
hall.
had like a lot of stuff to explore.
Yeah.
That was actually enjoyable. New Vegas. I mean, New Vegas, if you add in a World of Pain with, you can have that dungeon crawling experience that you had in 3, but
I actually think New Vegas is good. I
New
don't-
Vegas is
I
an
don't know.
excellent
everyone
game.
loves New Vegas.
I
I've
actually
never
have
heard
a
anyone who
sort of
hates New
problem
Vegas.
with New Vegas, actually, because my opinions are always terribly shit. But like, I really loved it. I loved it more than like 3 and 4 especially. But I just lost interest in it quicker than I lost interest in 3 while playing it, because as much as I loved the story a lot more and I loved the atmosphere it gave more and the gameplay even, but it just, something about the world itself, like the actual level design, I guess you could call it, just bored the shit out of me. I couldn't
It's
keep
very
going.
boring.
I can
It's
see
very
it.
bland. It's just a big desert, and there's not a lot of stuff.
It's not just that. I think like the quest where I stopped playing was actually quite early on. You get to the guy that shot you in the head, and I was going there like, yeah, I want to shoot this fucker in the head. But I go there and he's in his casino. It's like, oh, you shouldn't shoot him because like all the guards will be on you. You'll probably die. I was like, oh,
Just
right,
fucking
then I
shoot
guess I'll go
him,
to his
man.
room.
That's what I did. Well, I
You
didn't.
can do that.
I
That's
seduced
the
him and
great thing.
stabbed his back, but second time I shot him in the head, just immediately.
I took him back to his apartment and I killed him with a fire
No.
axe.
I went there to
Honestly-
his apartment and I wanted to shoot him there, but then he just talked at me for a minute. I was like, oh, well, all right then. I mean, I'll listen, because I kind of like, as much as I wanted to shoot, like, I also very much like going through the diplomatic sort of routes, so like the charisma based ones, because I find those pretty interesting. But I still wanted to shoot the bastard.
that's one of my favorite things about that game is that he seems like he's open to a deal, and then just 5 guys walk in and start shooting you, and he's gone.
That goes
Which
back
is
to the
good,
original
actually.
point, because yeah, it's about character. Like, there's no way, no matter how you play the courier is going to get over the fact that Benny shot him in the fucking head, and there's no way that Benny as a character is going to want to give up his own ambitions of controlling New Vegas. Granted, Benny's a fucking idiot and doesn't even know how to use the platinum chip, but
I mean, that's the part where I think it would be difficult to sell to readers as a quest. If you had a deal like that and you know that this character is a snake, but the readers fall for it, that would be.
and then you
delicious
reveal
salt.
that, oh, by the way,
Yeah.
you fell for it.
Yeah,
That's when
yeah.
the railroading accusations start.
Yeah, but it's not actually railroading. It's just a good world with good characters that are consistent.
Railroading seems to me, I mean, I get railroading is a very good complaint. It's like a good problem to look out for, but there are people
It's-
who mistake the fact that there are things that the player is not going to have control over, and then they mistake that for railroading.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of the more silly salt comes from.
It's also a buzzword.
Wait, what'd you say? That's word?
Buzzword.
Buzz.
Buzzword.
A busword.
Okay, a
Yeah,
buzzword.
kind of like fun.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like political correctness.
Yeah.
Kind of
so
like
my-
buzzwords, for that matter.
The only
Yeah, that too.
the only time I've ever had a problem with like railroading and quests that I can really think up off the top of my head are like what Vox does and what Somnius does. And Vox he kind of does a lot of like out of like the like internal part of the quest and like word of author kind of like shooting down specific ideas, which are just really, really weird. And then he also, I mean, for Somnius, that's the other one. Somnius has this thing where like people will vote to do options, and then he'll like say kinda yes, and then like delay them and have it be the same set of options again.
when it comes to railroading in quests, the only time I can remember that I've been really angry at quests in general was Arcleon's Prince's Guard quest. And it's not even like the general accusation, the most common accusation, which is that he set the character up against like an invincible swordsman or whatever, like someone they couldn't beat. I was actually totally fine with that. It was that Arcleon actively shot down any choices which could possibly, under some circumstances, have made the main character more effective.
Yeah, you were set up to fail, not allowed to do anything about it.
No, and it's not just that he prevented people from making decisions that would improve their effectiveness. It's that when people like presented a plan for how they could increase their effectiveness, he would edit out anything that would actually work and only keep the things that didn't.
Yeah, but I did not read Princess Guard Quest in full. I think I might have gotten.
I didn't read that either.
Like,
I didn't finish
the first
no.
third of it, and then briefly skimmed the duel that everyone was shitting about. But honestly, he's just a bad QM. Like, he's not a bad writer necessarily, but he's bad at QMing.
I have a couple points to make on railroading, if that's all right. The first is more of a secondhand thing I've heard a lot about, which was a certain man called Velo.
Oh yeah, Velo.
Yeah, from what I heard, he controlled his quests by pretending to be a player and using that sort of guise to shoot down people's ideas and options to sort of twist the story in the direction he wanted it to go.
Yep, and he got caught.
Yeah, but I think that is almost worse than just normal railroading, because normal railroading you can only excuse like, all right, they probably just don't know how to write it otherwise. But that just felt snaky. Hearing about that, it just
because it is.
Yeah, exactly. But
the worst thing too is that what he wanted was like the weirdest fucking thing too. Like if he was shooting down like these really weird esoteric ideas, it'd be one thing. But like he specifically was trying to engineer it so they would create a like industrial revolution in the world of Westeros.
Oh god, that's the worst thing you can do. Fuck,
that's the most autistic thing I've heard.
The players had to be one thing, but it was the QM who wanted to do this. So while the players were like, yeah, let's tell stuff to Varys and get into the world, like the QM is from the side pretending to be some fucking autist because he is.
That's alternate history material.
Every option I've submitted in my quest always has my name on it. And it's just, it's usually just an idea I think of after I've already posted the poll, and I'm just like, hey, wait, this would be a good option. And I put that in.
Quest was
submitting it and pretending to be a player. It's just like, why?
Yeah, it's the insidiousness of it, and the fact that he also got caught.
Yeah.
Industrial Revolution was this like a Westeros Otherworld quest, Isekai or whatever it's called?
Yeah, it was like an isekai. It's essentially the one that I lampooned on Anonkun and also lampooned on QST.
Ah, yes. I think that Westeros is the absolute worst setting for that genre. I mean, I can't imagine a worse one, honestly.
I think that genre is
Lord of the Rings,
shit, to be honest. Yeah. There's like this story
Lord of the Rings,
on
maybe.
fanfiction that Saruman of the Many Devices or whatever, and I have just discovered this genre and I hate it. I absolutely abhor it.
I think the absolute worst one is Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality.
Oh God, get out! Fuck you! Fuck you!
Yeah, exactly.
I only just heard of it. It sounds terrible.
What the fuck is that?
That's Eliza. Okay, there's this guy, Eliza Yudkowsky, who's like a self-proclaimed rationalist, like a philosopher kind of guy. So he rewrote Harry Potter in the sense that what if Harry Potter was a rationalist in the vein of Less Wrong, which is the site.
He hasn't even read the books, you know.
He
hasn't. That's
he
read
like, the first 3 or something, and then
Harry is like obsessed with making everything optimal, well designed, and like there's AI stuff involved, and Harry is now a polyamorist because polyamory is the only logical relationship.
Okay, now we're
what?
And there's other shit too. Like I don't even know what the transformation type magic is called anymore, but
Transfiguration.
you know the one. Transfiguration, right? So he designs nanocube strings for transfiguration, with which he beheads Voldemort. Because fuck all this. And there's a scene in the first chapter which was all I could really stomach to read.
Wait, what site?
Which it's on fanfiction.net.
Oh.
It's a scene where he goes to Gringotts, the Wizarding Bank, and he makes a comment about the exchange rate and the content of gold in a coin, and how he could just exchange it to how he could just melt it down to gold and then exchange it for muggle money and then exchange it back to galleons again, and how it would be awesome, and how he's so smart, and how the wizards are also dumb for not thinking about it. But that's the kind of thing you build in these plot holes, because it's not actually a plot hole in the book. It's something that's not explained, but you could easily explain it away if you
Well, no, Harry Potter
don't
is really
want
stupid
to
in that
give
regard.
the wizards the idiot ball. You can easily find an explanation, but
Yes, I think that
Reminder that wizards have the power of time travel. Rather than use that to stop Voldemort from killing everyone, they just used it so Hermione could go to extra classes.
Well,
the major problem with like Harry Potter was that it was like, you can't apply logic to it. It's one of those series that, like, I don't like it personally, but I understand why people like it. It's got one of those mass appeal sort of things going for it, but it is an inherently illogical story in almost every sense of it, especially in the writing, because it was like plot device after plot device when it came to
exactly. And I think that if you're going to make fan fiction in general, I mean, you should try and take like the original setting at its best.
Yeah,
you should
make like an
love what you write for.
What you should do is if you see something that doesn't make sense and you say, well, there's a solution to this problem which some person could come up with, just have everybody already come up with it. Why is that so fucking hard?
Yeah, that's exactly my point of contention with that example I gave.
Also, polyamory is the worst. Both on this, both on an emotional level, and on like from studying how societies develop and relationships develop. Polyamory is
one thing I will say
is a cancer.
I know you're about polyamory specifically and not harems, like actual.
Yeah, I was going to speak up about that.
I think
historically you can do a harem, but it should be you're the emperor of China.
I mean, if we look at historical harems, they were pretty much generally a bad idea, even when they were specifically political reasons.
Like, modern polyamory is like a communal sort of thing, where it's like hippie free love, and we all know how that ended up.
It's just a
I'm amazed I'm amazed we have not seen a new Manson.
No, I mean I think that any sort of relationship circle which is larger than two people is societally a problem. Like, it made sense for the Ottoman Empire and the Chinese Empire, because they had large territories of rival tribes competing, and you needed hostages and you needed familial connections in order to keep everything rolling. But I don't think those societies weren't good societies. They shouldn't have been that big.
It doesn't matter if you think they're good or bad. They existed / they can exist in a quest setting.
I mean, sure. I'm just saying that.
It just seems like you're like commentary about like some sort of morality judgment.
I'm just saying that I loathe polyamory on every level. I hate how it distorts stories. Absolutely. Also.
Yeah, I just hate it for that last point. I hate how they distort stories. It's you can't pull it off. You can be the best writer if you have all these characters that are love interests that the players are invested in. You need to give time to them, and the bigger the harem is, the more time you need to give to them, because it just amasses this huge time sink, and no matter how good you are, you're not gonna overcome that problem.
This is the problem with Wafer Wars as well, though it's a smaller one in that case than with harems.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely. I've got players trying to work out a harem ending, and I'm kind of pointing out it's a balancing act because if you get greedy and go for the harem ending and it doesn't work out, you're going to get the school days ending.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Well,
even give the
I'm glad at
possibility
least
of
one
a
person
harem
got the
ending, to be honest.
reference.
it's like with harems. Like again, this is my taste. I don't mind a harem story, maybe not in a quest, but in other media. But I like them more when it's less of a harem, but more of just the idea of like there is the main couple, but then there's also competition for the main girl, at least that sort of thing.
I mean,
Like a true anime harem sort of thing, where there's like 8 girls, and you're like, which girls are you gonna take? And that's essentially what Waifu Wars is.
Yeah, that's dumb. It's much better when there's like a clear winner. And again, like the best kind of harem stories are the ones where the winner actually wins at some point, and the rest of the story sort of focuses on how the losers adjust if they actually like go off and get something else, and if there's any actual dangers to the relationship of the main characters. And what I'm doing here is basically just shilling Jitsuwa Watashiwa because it's the best thing ever written by mankind. But yeah.
Yeah, but then you need to make it the focus. You can't, like, okay, I'm on a conceptual level, I'd be fine with this multiple relationship harem type whatever if it's the absolute focus of the quest. But if it's about conquering nations or advancing as a wizard or whatever the fuck, and you throw that in there, then it takes over the quest, and that's shit.
I don't
and
know. Oros's Death Knight quest kind of avoided that. It was more like the harem grew with every single adventure, but it didn't take over the quest at any point. It was still Death Knight quest. I think it just predominantly ended because Oros is kind of ADHD, but
All quests that Oros starts will end soon.
no, I mean he has finished 1 or 2 quests. He does finish quests occasionally.
Yeah, but that's more to do with this insane word count per hour than it's to do with
I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
they'll
Oros
end
is like-
soon.
consistently spends on his quest.
he's a good writer and he's actually a good QM. But yeah,
I don't think Oros is a good writer, and I've read Orosporo. I've read him basically from the start. Actually, I read his first Exalted quest because I read everything Exalted related because I have terrible taste. But he can't write.
Power Rangers smut quest.
Oros really can't write.
Like the only quest that I absolutely
disagree
want him
because
to
I've
continue
seen
is the Laws of the Old Republic quest, but that's just because I crave Star Wars.
I've seen QMs who literally cannot write, like the Bible Black QM.
I mean, sure.
So I have
exist.
low standards.
I mean, sure. Oros is mediocre, and that's better than average. And he writes a lot, and writing a lot is a good thing, really. I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day, and if you shoot 1,000,000 bullets, at least one will hit.
Plus, usually the more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah,
Well,
you have to write.
Usually.
Well, Oros
Not really.
Oros has improved slightly over time. I'll give him that. He has improved.
I mean,
Uh,
quality-wise, I think the most important thing really is self-review. And you can self-review if you don't write, granted. But I think you can write a huge load of shit and never ever get better. That's definitely possible.
That's true, but I mean, I'd say it's more true more often than not that people become better writers over time. I mean, and good writers
Well-
become better writers over time.
Well, it depends, like the attitude they're writing with. If they're writing with the attitude, yes, what I'm doing now is fine, this is good, they're not going to get better because they don't want to improve. But if they go into a quest with the idea of this is a practice, this is an opportunity for me to get better at this, then they will improve because they have the need to. So they will start taking on tips and criticisms and actually listening to like feedback and that, and they will
Yeah.
improve because of that.
A good example for that is some Naruto writer on fanfiction who Kenshi something who wrote decent to pretty shit stories with huge word counts for months, for years, and only recently started getting better because only recently he started actually wanting to get.
Yeah, I mean, I go into it with the idea of like, okay, this is like practice for me. I'm going to get better with every single rendition, with every single iteration. Like, I can look at my work and I can see how I've improved.
Yeah, and I would just want to respond to something Malefica wrote here. The thing is that fucking criticism happens rarely unless sought is high, and that's true. It's like if you have a loaded environment, if you make a mistake and the tempers run high, you're gonna get called out, and sometimes someone is gonna write a rant that is gonna hit the nails on the head, and that's really good feedback. But the sad thing is that other than that, you're not really gonna get good feedback.
And
there's also the problem that's like linked to that is that from a few I've played at least, whenever a quest sort of gets its own community or like its own Discord even, they tend to develop a sort of hug box of sorts for the QM, where it just sort of becomes at least like this constant underlying level of appreciation and praise for everything they do, and no one really ever speaks up to say, "Oi, mate, that's a bit shit."
More Discord should be like this one, where everybody insults everybody else, and there's only hate.
I'm very grateful that I have, at least in my own quests, I have a chat that will hold my feet to the fire and be like, "Why did it take you a fucking hour to write 8 lines?"
It always takes me an hour.
No, I'm glad. I feel like I don't want to say a shit quest is the player's fault, but I feel like if the players aren't actively pushing the QM to do a better job, the QM is eventually it's not going to get any better because he doesn't know what he's doing wrong and he doesn't know how to.
I think Maleficar is a very smart guy, and he really should be a guest on this podcast at some point. And what he's saying is absolutely right. When QMs antagonize their players and try and in order to get them riled up in general, that's a good thing for the quest, even if it's not good in most sort of writing. That's the only.
What do you mean by antagonize?
Antagonize, well, like how.
Stoke their tempers.
So, like, Soma only answers questions in ways that will piss people off.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I did that got my players way madder than I thought they would was for EvaQuest, I had their childhood friend, a male, not really a love interest, move in with them and share their room. And my players got beyond salty. They were like, well, now where are we going to sleep with girls? And they got really, really mad. And, like, that to me was the funniest thing ever, that it was just such this minor little plot update that I didn't even think was a big deal. It's like, oh yeah, now you have a roommate. And the sheer salt that came out of it was probably
it's Nippon. There's places for that,
But I think that's being assuming, of course, the main character, that it was in character for him to give his mate a shared room. That's being kind of a shitty player, isn't it?
Well, no, the main character doesn't really have any say in it. This was something that was decided by his higher ups because there's only so many rooms in the apartment, and his adult custodians didn't want to share a room. So
basically, there were economic reasons for sharing an apartment, which makes perfect sense in Japan of all places. And oh shit,
well, this isn't in Japan, but
I just realized I forgot to mute Discord, so I'm getting constant pings, and this is going to show up in the broadcast. I am the worst person.
Fuck you, you shit.
One of the problems with like antagonizing players, and in general, like needing to receive criticism from them, is even when a QM is doing a shit job, I think players are probably more likely to just leave a quest if it's shit or if it pisses them off than, stay and just autistically fit over it at the QM.
That's
or at least I'd like
culture,
to think most people aren't autistic.
Like, that's something I've strongly considered multiple times, to just man up and start a quest over on DLP, who would tear my writing to shreds, and that would help me improve. But I don't think I'm a coward. That's it. But I think Anonkun kind of lacks that side culture of being there in part to improve the writing you see. You take the writing you get, and if it annoys you, you might actually write a rant, but you're not really reading stuff with the mindset of, okay, can I improve this? And that's a shame, I think.
I think there's something on the quest board on 4chan that's sort of tries to solve the problem in a way, and it's the quest general thread, because that often has people actually writing reviews of quests, and they're not always just like pure rants. Sometimes they're positive reviews, but they often actually give a level of criticism. And having something like that, like a sort of area to review quests and talk about the quality of them, like if the QM's can like go there and like check out what people have said, unless they're the sort of QM that would have a little salty fit at someone dissing their quest, then that can actually be quite a good thing.
I mean, that's part
And
of
I
why this
think
podcast
that's-
exists.
I think that's something we should work on as Icon users, like assuming we are. There should totally be like a section of the site that's a review gatherings thing, because the actual review function doesn't get used at all. It's just that.
Isn't there like a?
But I feel like if you implemented that in the site, invariably it would somehow lead to a shit ton of drama. And
Well, what
cats
if
would probably
what if you just opened a new topic, like not a topic, an actual quest topic or
story,
whatever it's
like-
called, and you have a QM whose thing is that a QM whose job is just they take things reviews people post in chat and put them in the main quest, and like move reviews around and so on.
Well, that'd be a fucking thankless job, though. You'd need to encourage people to actually post their reviews in that central review database. So, because you can't go into every story and stay around just for the salt levels to get.
Sure,
higher.
I mean you could just have you can encourage people to take other people's reviews and put them there without their consent, because this is the fucking internet, and who gives a shit about consent?
Kind of like the main chat topic, which is fucking useless because no one actually used this. But kind of like that, but for reviews.
Yeah, exactly. Well, people do use main chat. I mean,
I
I
don't use
know,
really
I
main
know.
chat anymore ever since this Discord was introduced.
Which is a shame. We could use some new blood.
You mean, is that like the that's on Aiken, right? Main chat hub 3.0.
yeah, exactly.
I don't personally know much about Aiken because I'm one of the few faggots here that just doesn't use it because I'm a piece of shit. But like,
Well, I don't use QST, so
I don't even question much at the moment. I need to get back into it. I don't know why I'm here. But if they were to do a review section for the website, from what I've heard about Aiken, it seemed to have everyone has their actual profiles they use to quest and play and QM and that sort of thing. So I don't know if it uses anonymity at all, like 4chan does.
It does.
It has optional anonymity, and most people use
I
it.
think
well, its name
if you
is
wanted to do the
Anonkun,
reviews, I think it should be the review section might be forced anonymity or something, so people don't have to worry about being personally lynched for their opinion on a quest, because that would definitely be something to encourage people to do it. Because
I mean,
if you know you can't get
nobody posts. If somebody posts their opinion under their real name or whatever, they're standing for that opinion. I'm just saying.
And also, the user base has 4chan culture. Let's not kid ourselves.
I'm all for a forced anon option, but I feel like, let's be real, in the process of implementing it, the site would crash 3 different times.
Yeah, I mean, force anon makes perfect sense, but it's not going to happen. I mean they still.
I'm in favor of absolutely no changes ever, simply because it works.
It took 5 months
It
to fix
doesn't
line
go-
breaks.
It really doesn't. We still don't have tab stops. I mean, how the fuck can we not have tab stops?
Edits still don't work properly.
Yeah, you still need to use user scripts to edit HTML.
Yeah, sometimes it breaks.
But
And there's this one Anon who knows how to bring the site down, and he's a piece of shit cunt that gets triggered by... Who is it? Who is the guy with all the mediocre smut quests?
all of them.
Yeah, all of them, of course. You know who I mean. Chuckles, yeah. He gets triggered by Chuckles banning him. and brings the site down in response every 3 months or something like that. So I am in favor of changes implemented into the website. I just don't want Cast to do it.
But yeah, there was something I wanted to discuss for this podcast, which is like it's about a specific quest. But I have a question in general. What quests really make you mad, but you have to keep reading? Does anybody here have a quest like that?
It was Dungeon Life quest for me for the longest fucking time, but then eventually I stopped reading it. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for, because I would like read through a thread and then like get fucking mad, and then I'd read the next thread and get fucking mad, and you can only do that for some level of time until you either have to shitpost so hard you ruin the quest or leave. Like, those are like, it gets to that point. You either have to quit your bitching, shitpost the quest to death, or leave.
Yeah, I had something sort of like that. Like, since it's been mentioned a couple of times, DGA. I really liked it during the first season, but then the second season, I don't want to diss the QM because he's an alright guy, right? And that, but like the second season, the writing just sort of turned to sort of weak harem shit a bit. Everything was like every interaction you had with a female character was basically, "Oh, I might fuck you later," or something like that. And I just sort of, I was getting pissed off by it, and eventually I just bailed on the whole thing because I was like, nah, I don't want to see the story I like to turn into
Was it
this.
a new MC for the second season?
Yeah, it was a new MC for the second season, but then they sort of switched to and fro between him and
Like
it was the first MC.
I guess for me it was Collared Quest, but it wasn't like I never got mad. I was just like, this isn't really doing anything for me. I'm not really, I'm just like, okay, maybe it'll be something that's interesting. Maybe it'll be something that's engaging, and then just no, it just was like a bunch of fetishes I wasn't really into. So it was just like, okay, I'm gonna drop it.
I had a quest that made me sad. I don't even remember what it was. I just know that it was written really well, and consistently the choices were what I fucking hated. It was always the choice I fucking hated, and so I stopped reading, which is what I do.
I mean, I guess currently the one for me is I'm reading Evil Sorceress Quest, and I don't get mad at the QM that much because I think he's not like, he makes mistakes every once in a while, but it's nothing I can really like point out as a major flaw. But like, I get into so many arguments with autistic players.
Oh yes, that's the part of questing I could do without. Like the write-ins that are fucking terrible speeches instead of just saying yes. All the fucking autistic shit that happens. Oh god.
I've managed to avoid most of that so far, but
what I really hate is the false belief that like certain autists have, where they think that because the way they think they feel is the most logical way to think, they think everything they think is the right decision.
Yeah, their belief in their own righteousness and superiority, and the fact that the universe centers around them. Yeah. And to an extent, it does, because let's be real, it's a quest, it's the MC, he has a certain amount of plot armor. It does to some extent, but you're not supposed to act like it.
Well, I am a terrible person, and being a terrible person, I browse SB. I read Space Battles and Sufficient Velocity Quests and so on.
I thought you said SP, and I was just going to be like, your face when the Bears win the Super Bowl.
What? I'm Swedish.
No,
I won't watch
sports board, unfortunately.
I get that joke.
No,
yeah,
but
SV
they're also
is cancer.
Yes, so there's this quest, Heir of the Bruce battle. It's a BattleTech quest, and it irritates me constantly, but not quite enough to abandon it completely. The entire quest is basically a way for the QM to have like a pulpit in order to lecture people about psychology.
What?
No, I mean,
what do you need to talk about psychology in BattleTech?
No, that's his entire thing is that everything is psychology. Economy is based in psychology.
Me wanting to take an atlas and strap like a bunch of PPCs to it and just have a fucking field day. That's not psychological. That's me just wanting to have fun.
Well, I mean, it's
Your desire
a dynastic
to have fun
part.
is psychological, though.
Your desire to have fun clearly psychologically reflects your desire to fuck your own mother.
I mean, there's been no been no combat in the quest.
Everything is a spook.
There's not. No, nothing in the quest so far has been combat. Like, there's the main characters survived the bombing run or something, but it's all been like character stuff and economics and so on, and that's fine. Except that the
Who gives a fuck about characters in BattleTech? Like,
What's BattleTech?
well, I mean,
the lore in BattleTech is intentionally just dumb. It's just created to be silly, like Warhammer.
My favorite BattleTech quest had no combat either, actually. That was a mech engineer quest. That was pretty cool. But that was about that was about creating giant robots and designing them and so on.
Yeah, like the fun of most of the fun of BattleTech is mech building. I mean, if you ever played any of the old Mech Warrior games, even if you watch like a playthrough of them,
also BattleTech comes out soon.
I'll spend like 75% of the video in the mech lab, just constantly making sure. The same with Armored Core, really. Like, everybody spends all their time customizing their mech, tricking it out.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes sense. Mech engineer quest makes sense, but this quest is all about politics and economics and stuff, and the QM's bias is constant. The entire point of the quest is to demonstrate QM's bias. In his signature, he has this quote: "All writing reflects the writer's ideology. Understanding this and its consequences makes for both a superior writer and a more discerning reader."
Everything is ideology.
Did someone say, I gotta fuck it? I was practicing my Zizek impression for this.
I was about to bring him up as well.
Ideology.
Stuff obviously.
You just have to sniff a lot. That's the key to a Zizek impression.
You have to sniff a lot, snort a little bit, choke every word you say, and then pull in your shirt a lot.
To get back to the point that Spuds should have made, SV and SB are shit, their readers are shit, most of their QMs are fucking shit, and yeah, I mean, I like to play characters who are basically what you'd call white knights. I like people with mostly functional morality, and I still prefer Akun and 4chan and Quest, even though it's that, to SB and SV, because God,
I've never been there
stand their self-righteousness.
There's like 5 decent quests on all of those 3 sites combined. Most
of those come from authors who don't really come from those sites.
That's actually true. In my experience, that's actually true. I can think of one exception, which is Battle Action Harem Side Character Quest. I quite like that, and that guy is steeped in like the SV mindset. But
honestly, most of the quests I follow there are from the LP writers.
What the fuck is up with you in DLP? That's that Harry Potter fanfiction site that is extremely vitriolic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a critic site basically. It's got standards, which is more than I could say for most other sites I frequent.
Well, I mean, I'd say Akun does have some standards, and those standards are if you do something we don't like, we're going to fucking tell you in the strongest possible terms. But it takes quite a bit to get people to that point.
But that's not about writing quality. That's about writing stuff that has.
Well, in my experience, that often has to do with writing quality.
Like if Bible Black hasn't been driven from the site yet, you can't come to me about standards.
I mean, does that run still?
I feel kind of bad that I've only talked about him behind his back, but there's no way I can politely go up to the guy and be like, dude, is English your first language or what? Like, if English isn't his first language, I'll give him a pass. I'll be like, okay, yeah, you tried, and good effort, good hustle, because I can't speak another fucking language.
Even
But-
then, just run it through fucking Word.
But in any case, the thing
Actually,
ab-
that'd be a really fun concept for a quest. Someone who doesn't speak English that well, and they run their entire quest through Google Translate.
That'd actually be really sick for like.
It'd be
trying
great
to
if
pronounce it
like
when
you had
put
the.
your options in.
It'd be great if the story behind it was like the main character is like horribly heavily dyslexic, so it's almost like creating this sort of meta interpretation of how they like read and hear things because they just have no idea what people are saying.
This is turning into like a Suda 51 David Lynch style quest, and I love it. Like this whole concept.
But yeah, that BattleTech quest before. The thing is, the writing is actually pretty solid, which is why I keep reading it. But I still hate it. It still
Yeah.
irritates me
It
constantly.
was the same thing actually for me and Dungeon Life Quest, where I was like, writing quality wise, I like it. There are some scenes that Vox wrote that I was like, damn, I really enjoy that. That stuck with me. But eventually, just all the shit you don't like, it either builds up or you get over it. I just don't think that the anger really adds to the reason why you keep coming back. I think like it's just an obstacle.
Yeah, no, I think in those kinds of quests where you have like a constant niggling and irritation that builds up and builds up and builds up. It's not like quests where you have shitstorms and you get it all out at once. It's catharsis and it keeps you coming back to an extent. No, but it's not the same when it's like those niggling irritations.
Yeah, like with my quest, I had a thing where I would do is for the dice system, if I didn't put the I when I said roll 2d6 or whatever, if I didn't have that I for individual and I just got all the dice in the sum, I would throw out the result and I would re-roll this time with the I. And that would really piss my players off because sometimes I'd originally roll a result that would count as a critical success, and then the re-roll would be just a normal success, or even worse, the re-roll would be a failure, and they would just get mad as hell about that.
Yeah,
So-
but that's completely understandable. If you make the mistake, then you have to own up to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the players are the ones rolling the dice.
I don't like re-roll mechanics in general. I think they're not very interesting.
I like dice which have a chance to fail, and I think I'm gonna say 80% of all quests are too lax with that. Like they get 3 fucking D20s and then the DC is like 14 or something.
Yeah, I'm having that problem now with the dice system I've invented, in that I'm realizing it's actually ludicrously easy. Although it's not necessarily that hard because the players continue to point all of their specs in sex-related stuff and charisma level stuff, and when it comes
So they're
to
being
actual...
stupid.
Yeah, no, when it comes to actual combat, they're only rolling like 2 or 3 dice instead of like 6 dice to get a girl in bed. But so it's much more easy for them to fail in combat, but they're still kind of facing the problem where the simple D6 system is not perfectly engineered, as I'm learning.
Yeah, like this is one of the things I don't actually really like about Banish Quest, even though I fucking worship it. This system.
The
like,
resource
Yeah,
system
the
is
mana
questionable. Yes.
It is also something about Lost Earth, which uses the exact same system. It works kinda when you start out because you have to. Well, it's a resource, and at the start, it's precious, but it got out of hand, and it got out of hand badly. Like
Because at the start, he only has like 10 vis, right? And if you're at 2, you start passing out.
Yeah, exactly. And they're using this at
How the
every
fuck
fucking opportunity.
How the fuck do you mute notifications? Because I've tried every method I can think of, and I'm still getting the small beeps.
Go
And
to every single one and hit the little bell thing. Mute every single. Oh, but then there's multiple channels for each
No,
Discord.
I have done it in literally every channel, and I'm still getting the
Okay,
beeps.
Spud, leave every single Discord except for this one. You can join them back later.
No, go to user settings and then go to notifications and then just.
No,
Okay,
I've
disable
turned them all off.
Notifications.
I've disabled all notifications sounds, and it's still not fucking working.
Maybe your Discord's just broken. It is still technically a beta piece of software. It breaks.
Yeah. Although it's still better than Skype.
Oh god, yes, of course.
Of course, everything is.
With the added bonus that Discord is not a botnet.
Skype,
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Skype actually needed to like run through Internet Explorer to access the internet as well. That's just abysmal.
What is Mick's Vis pool at this point? Like 200 or
30
something?
or something? Like it's
Oh,
50,
30.
but he introduced a new rule that it's only it's over 50. It's like you can only use 1/3 on rolls or something, and that's good. That's a new rule.
And then he
it's
also
really
has the thing that you have like super vis or something which you can only spend every so often. So that brings in more problems.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's too much resources. They use it on everything. They succeed at everything, meaning they get better faster, and it's a compounding problem, and it doesn't stop.
It seems like what he should have done to limit that going way too bullshit is that he should never have had a Vis pool over like 20. I think you have to like limit that.
There should be a maximum Vis pool. I agree, and then you can have it for individual spell effects.
Or you could make resource spending to improve rolls and make it percentage based. Like you need to spend a percentage of your Vis pool for that specifically, so you can still do like big spells and shit, but you can't when it comes to improving actions. There's a stricter limit.
Or are you saying it will always like take 20% of your maximum Vis pool?
Like if you want to give yourself a +5, you need to spend 40% of your Vis pool.
I agree with that actually.
Because if you really think about it, right, the Vis pool getting large is okay because that means you can go for longer. But aren't there already like bonuses to the roll depending on if Mick has like a cool sword? This cool sword gives you a +5, right? So like he's already rolling 3d10 with bonuses, trying to get like a 30 DC is like.
I mean, he hit like a 150 DC at a point, but that was in special circumstances with extra preparation and
all
stuff.
the fucking bonuses, yeah. Like I don't mind his DCs as such. I mean, I just mind the Vis.
The mechanics for modifying, for using resources to modify rolls is a problem. That's like one of the biggest. That's the biggest. When it comes to power creep, there's a lot of it in Banished Quest, but it's deliberate for the most part. But when the Vis stuff, that doesn't seem. That seems like it's almost accidental.
Because it means consequently that you succeed everything, or you succeed everything to a point and then die. Because if you have no Vis and you start failing rolls, then you're in deep shit.
And
he's never gonna take it that far.
And also, if you are in a situation where you are at risk, where it's balanced to your actual abilities, you're going to need Vis all the time, and then it's going to keep going until you run out.
Yeah, and you don't run out long enough. That is also my problem. He just needs to meditate like once for 3 hours or something. And if he does that immediately after every time he gets low, well, then he's always fucking full.
And also, I feel like the succeeding all the time has led to, and maybe this makes the quest better, so I don't know if I want to shit on it too hard, but if you succeed every roll, naturally as a QM, when the QM has a chance to fuck you, I'm gonna fuck you hard because you're succeeding all the time. So he does that thing where if you roll 3 1s and it's within like the first 5 or 6, he fucks Mick hard. Now,
I mean, that's true. I think
I don't have a problem with that, actually.
I think when it comes to Banish Quest, that's actually for the better. Honestly, I mean,
I think it's for better because
the players are there to get fucked in the ass, to an extent. I think that's part of what draws people in. That's why he maintains that shitposty culture in his threads, where he keeps antagonizing people and talking about his dog or whatever. No, he hasn't done that. But he does anything to make...
Talks about spider pussy.
Yeah, he does anything to lower the level of discussion.
But I mean, if you roll 3 ones on a 3d10 roll, that's I don't know, it's 1d1000.
Are you still there, Garbage? Just wondering.
That's exceptionally.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think I have no problem with severe consequences for a crit. That unlikely.
Yeah, but it's also within like the first 10, or is it the first 5? Because it's outside of the first 3, which I think
I've always questioned those systems where you keep taking crit rolls outside of the actual thing. I mean, I think crit rolls are questionable in general.
If you roll a triple nat 1, even if it's the 4th roll in Banished or the 5th.
Yeah, I know. I've read Banished, and he also does the same thing. He also does the same thing for triple 20s, if I remember correctly.
Triple 10s?
Triple 10s.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
So maybe it's a good thing for Banished, but I think the fact that it seems like Mick never fails any of his rolls. I mean, if you don't fuck them hard on the triple ones, like
you can't fuck them at all.
When is there ever going to be a wrench in the fucking works? Like, you have to throw something in there because that makes a story better. Failing makes things better.
I just had a discussion about that yesterday with an Anon who said his real life is shitty enough, he doesn't want to see failure in quests. And okay, I guess, but I disagree, and I think quality-wise it's objectively true that failing is more interesting, if it's as interesting, if not more interesting than success.
Well, you can't fail all the time, because then that gets equal.
No,
you
can
can fail the majority of the time, and having success be sweetened by that.
I mean, there are situations...
Your Chaos Sorcerer quest, where the failure was extremely interesting because of the way the dice mechanics worked and how it would affect the progression of the story. And so usually because you rolled whenever you tried to cast a spell, and because this was in the Warhammer setting, not Warhammer 40,000, just regular Warhammer, obviously failure with Winds of the Warp or Perils of the Warp.
It's called Winds of Magic or Perils of the Warp. You don't mix them.
I don't follow Warhammer Fantasy that well, but yeah, because of the consequences of failure, a critical fail could completely change the situation, sometimes even for the better, accidentally. But yeah, it was just really good in that sense, in that the failure or success would drastically change the situation.
Well,
and I think
when
really counts.
When it comes to success, I mean, I have a very niche opinion on the subject, because my favorite thing in this direction is when you succeed, but the victory felt like it would have been better if the whole thing had never happened to start with.
Pyrrhic victory.
Yeah, the Pyrrhic victory.
Yes, exactly. There's one of my favorite novels, which everybody gives me shit for this sometimes, which is Wildbow. He writes web novels, and he wrote a novel called Pact. And Pact is 1 million plus words of constant Pyrrhic victories. And it's great. It's amazing. Everybody should read Pact. Pact is the best.
I definitely
I'm not really familiar with web novels.
I definitely like success with complications or further concerns later. Or
Well, that was what I meant in that case. I mean, there are constant complications in
Exactly.
response to his victories.
Yeah, I like the idea of your successes breeding your new problems, because that does keep
Well,
it
that's
going.
one of the conditions I have for for my dice system. If the highest number is a 3, that's a yes, but as in it's at best it's a partial success. But usually as a result of succeeding, there's usually something bad that happens. Like the classic example is in fencing. Maybe you get a hit with that thrust and with that lunge, or not in fencing, but like sword fighting in general, where you get the hit with the lunge, but then you've overextended yourself and now you're in a bad position. But yeah, some sort of Pyrrhic victory, usually that's a good way to keep things spicy, keep things interesting.
Yeah. And also, if there's failure, or if there's majority failure, like if most of your actions lead to failure with, but you did get something, is definitely really interesting.
Well, it keeps the players going, because if all you do is
failure
fail,
should not just be you don't get what you
Yes,
want.
I mean it should be
don't get what you
complicated
want, but
states.
I've got like a couple things to input here. Just on the topic of like failures in quests, I think the best way to like go about it, at least if you have a system where players are winning a lot, at least on dice rolls, then you probably want to start trying to like fuck them over in the lesser aspects, like fuck them over on the smaller things, make the more trivial things more difficult for them, like make picking the right text options when talking to certain characters or trying to achieve something, make that more difficult, so that when they'll end up forced into a situation where they have to think more on their toes and actually be a little more creative, at least outside of the dice fight. So there is an element of failure and trial and error there.
The thing is, if a dice system is like that, where you usually fucking always succeed, I think the dice system is faulty.
Yeah, well, that's obvious as well. I mean, like, if you want to apply the same sort of idea to the dice system, I suppose it would be like, have it so you don't want them like fucking up major things so bad that your quest kind of like craps itself, because
Why not?
well,
Exactly, I want
actually,
that.
yeah, let them crap it up. That'd be funny, actually.
I
don't know what I'm
mean,
saying.
I mean,
well, that's
I
what you've designed your quest to do.
I mean, I have an example here which I bring up whenever people bring up dice and dice fucking shit up. And people who've been on this podcast have probably heard this like 5 times. But once again, Wildbow in Worm once had a section of his quest where a kaiju attacked like the setting, like the
was
city.
Worm a quest? I was already
Worm wasn't a quest,
No.
but he rolled dice anyway, and he rolled a d4 for every character that was in that city at the time, and he had written up like 200 characters in that city because he's a fucking autist. I don't actually know if he's an autist, but he had written up like 200 characters, and he rolled a d4 for each of them, and whenever a 1 came up, they died. And that included the main character, who didn't actually, who in the end didn't die, but he put himself up to the challenge of writing a complete table flip of the setting. And I'd like to see that happen with quests.
That actually does sound pretty freaking cool, to be fair.
I think I remember a novel like that. It was something about a tournament, and it introduced like, I don't know, 16 fighters, and the author rolled dice to decide who lived and who died. And in the end, well, I think you always saw the perspective of the one that died in their match. But it was really interesting because in the end, an absolute asshole won, and all the good guys died. It was fucking awesome.
See, I don't really like that though, because like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan, and I know this is funny coming from the guy who writes the Evangelion quest. I'm not a big fan of like the total downer ending, the bad ending, just because a lot of the times it just leaves you feeling empty and miserable. Like True Detective season 2 is a great example of this. The ending is just so abysmally dour that it actually killed the series entirely. Like season 3 was pretty much canceled because of the backlash against the season 2 finale. It was just like everything ended.
Season
on
2
such a
wasn't
like-
very good in general, though.
I don't know. I liked it.
You said you were planning on doing it was you, right? You said you were going to do a Neon Genesis quest, right? Or are doing?
Well, I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. Like you were
Not
saying you
right
wanted
now.
them to get a better ending than the original. Is that because you had the same sort of feelings to that? Because End of Evangelion had a pretty grim ending.
No, not. I think the appeal for the players is getting a better ending. It's entirely possible they could get a worse ending, but Evangelion is fundamentally an apocalyptic piece of fiction. So I'm kind of making the point that with the endings, no matter what, the world is going to end. You can't stop the end of the world. It's like trying to make a Shin Megami Tensei game about trying to prevent the end of the world. It's a matter of
Well, I mean, I know of one QM who wrote 2 SMT quests, and the second one ended with literally the most rainbows and puppies and sprinkles ending you could possibly imagine for an SMT quest.
I mean,
Speaking of SMT quests, I just started running an SMT quest. Back to whatever else we were talking about.
But yeah, no, with my quest, it's no matter what's going to happen at the end of the day, and this is kind of a spoiler, but I feel like it's a given.
yeah.
There's going to be an apocalyptic event. There's already been an apocalyptic event in the world of Second Impact. Technically, even though it hasn't really gotten caught up to the players so much, it's pretty well established that the world that exists is a post-apocalyptic world. So now, where it really, with the end of Evangelion, it just matters what kind of apocalypse is there. Is it going to be sort
Choose
of
your color.
I mean, you could get not even necessarily in that, but like there are positive apocalypses, like the one at the end of part 6 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where there's an apocalypse, but everybody is still happily ever after. Or Crisis on Infinite Earths. There are stories where the entire world ends, but there's still a happy ending. So
Is there going to be a chance of having an ending where it's like the apocalypse happens, but society is actually able to reasonably rebuild afterwards? Like we got fucked over, but we sort of recovered.
I don't want to get into spoilers, but that is definitely possible.
Yeah,
that is
because
one of the options.
I mean, like I watched Evangelion, and I watched it quite recently, like probably just like last year, because I was really late to the party on it. But at first I really preferred the series ending, just because I don't know, I felt like it was a better conclusion to the character arcs, whereas the end of Evangelion was more like a conclusion to the story. But I always felt the story was just almost like a vehicle for the characters, because it was really character driven for me at first, at least. But then I sort of came to appreciate like End of Evangelion and what it really presented to the industry at the time and all that. But I'm just a sucker for more happier endings because I'm a sap, I guess.
You have to also factor in the meta level that for the characters, the story is a vessel for the characters, and the characters are a vessel for Hideki Anno working out his own personal issues. Yeah. And that's why people have criticized the tone of Rebuild. That's because Rebuild, when he made it, Anno is in a very different place than he was making the series. Like he's no longer having these insane depressive episodes. Studio Gainax is no longer worried about where all the money is coming from. So I think he's a little less liable to write a fuck you, everyone dies ending. Speaking of which, if you want to see the ultimate fuck you, everyone dies ending, Space Runway Ideon is...
I've been meaning to watch that, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's basically the anime that gave that gave Tamino the Kill 'Em All nickname, because that was literally the ending. He was at such a bitter misanthropic phase in his life where he's like, the ending of this episode, everyone dies, and then
what's the name?
Throw a little.
What's the name of the anime?
Space Runway Ideon. It's mostly well known now because did you ever see that GIF? It's from the anime of a kid getting his head blown off by a bazooka.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, that's a thing that happens. Like he's in the middle of a battlefield and a random shot just knocks his head off. Yeah.
And he's like 6 or something, right?
He's like a toddler.
Okay.
It's insanely messed up. And Tamino hates it. And he actually... Well, that was one of his criticisms of Evangelion. He said, Evangelion took the worst parts of my work and celebrated it. Like now all of his contemporary work, like from Turn A Gundam to, I guess, G-Reco, it's all happy. It's all very few people die. There's a happy ending. Conflicts get resolved. Like, people get a happily ever after. And part of that is because he feels with Mobile Suit Gundam and Space Runway Ideon, he ushered in an era of grimdark into anime, and that he wants to undo that by writing happier, softer animes.
But he
Which
wrote,
is going to. There's always going to be a demand for it.
All these things comes in cycles, you know. It's just
I mean, you can't put the cat in the bag. You
you
aren't going to get people to stop
you can't force the cat in the bag, but the cat is eventually going to go back in the bag and go to sleep. That's just how these things go.
Well, yeah, it's like as I was trying to say, on the other end of the spectrum to stuff like Evangelion and Ideon, you have the movie Pacific Rim, which was heavily inspired by Neon Genesis, but was basically everyone wins and Apocalypse is literally cancelled.
I heard like all the Evangelion similarities are basically just entirely accident, and that Del Toro had never heard of Evangelion until after he'd already made Pacific Rim.
I mean, it's based on giant robot shit. Like, you can't.
Yeah, it was more inspired by old school giant robot stuff.
But I always
generally
saw,
a happy ending.
I always saw like a bit of NGE because of the drifting. Sort of reminded me a lot of how like the pilots in Evas had to like kind of mind meld the Evas a bit. They had to have a sort of neural connection to them, or like an emotional connection.
No,
it sort of reminded me of that.
There was also the entire thing in Evangelion where they had to move in perfect synchronicity, which is like, if I remember.
Dancing part here. I just want to interject that I'm not saying that the book Where Every Good Guy Dies is something that I'd like to do in my quests. I think it was interesting because it explored the possibility. And I think the possibility, however minute, of a bad ending is needed for the victories to have any weight to them. And that's why I really disagree with this whole best of 3 DC's not around 15 method of dice, which is kind of prevalent because it's so it's so easy.
So you would rather it be like 1 D100 with 50 as the success?
50 as not success necessarily, but as a reasonable neutral outcome. But I take the 20.
I mean, the number one reason why I think you should do best of 3 is because if it's just a 50-50 on whether the character succeeds or fails, I mean, again, you can sort of narratively and use the fact the character is skilled to augment what the failure is versus what the success is.
I think it's okay when people have variable best of X systems, like. I think some Samsara Quest had something like that, where something that the main character was really bad at was worst of X, and something they were really good at was best of 3, and something they were okay at was average of 3.
Yeah, exactly. But that actually seems like a kind of a cool way to do it.
There's something like that I sort of want to see done, which is taking the best of 3 system and twisting on its head so it's actually the worst of 3. So everyone, like the first 3 rolls, they all have to be good, or you're a bit shagged. Like,
like I said, that's what Samsara Quest did that for things the main character was bad at, and there's been other quests which have done that for every role. It's a thing that happens. I mean, the questing's been going on for like 8 years at this point, and of those we've had 7 years where we've used dice.
Yeah, well, remember, I am new to this. I don't know why I'm here entirely. I'm just.
I mean, it's good to get the new guy's perspective, you know.
I'm a babby to questing.
I mean, what I did was that at the start I had a system where it was best of 3 for the PC and best of 1 for everyone else.
That's the worst. That's the worst.
The result
that's not the
to
worst.
the
That actually makes sense.
level of the NPC.
I understand why it's done, but it feels wrong. It doesn't feel right. But
why do you think so, though? I mean, the PC is narratively more important, and I don't think it's wrong to acknowledge that in the dice system.
But I mean, I'm probably going to use dice in my quest, which I'm going to write. But the way I'm
It's
going
very hard to not.
No, I understand. It's a conflict resolution mechanic, which makes sense in a format where there are several people involved in making decisions. Dice just makes sense. The way I'm going to do it is that I'm going to probably do something like 1d 100 or something, and I'm going to have really easy DCs for everything, because the main character is not going to be in situations where they're going to be in mundane situations almost all of the time. So the results are going to be easy, and then I'm going to have like degrees of success also on certain roles. Like the main character tries to acquire supplies from a military camp or something. Prioritize a list of the supplies you want most, and depending on the role, you'll get one thing for every 10 on the 1d 100 roll or something like that.
But the thing is, players like shiny options, and danger is shiny. If you give them a high risk, high reward avenue, then they're gonna explore that. And how are you gonna reflect?
The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to do degrees of success, and there's going to be safety nets, but generally if they fail a roll, they're going to take serious damage and they'll be close to death. And I'm going to have safety nets out over that, so that they can get themselves into deadly situations once or twice, but after that there's a resource which has been extinguished permanently, which makes it so that if they fail again, they're going to die.
And then what do you die?
There's a system I was thinking of using if I ever do run a quest, which I hope to. I have a couple ideas to at least.
Tell us one. Tell us an idea.
All right, a joke one I was planning on running. Pretty basic. I think I mentioned it here before. Space janitor quest. Some guy trains, like the backstory for the main character, pretty simple and basic. It would just be he's trained to be like a pilot. He gets his first job on a spaceship. He's been like delegated to just being the janitor. Bit pissed off. Doesn't even know how to unclog a toilet. The story would kind of be a sort of like, it was a very, very slice of life. It's just a sort of comfy little test run of like how I handle like QMing and that sort of thing. It's very much like kind of get into the spur of it.
I understand. I have a question about that quest.
Yeah, go ahead.
To go back to to the beginning of this discussion 2 fucking hours ago. Holy shit! We should probably finish this at some point. How are you going to strongly establish the character's personality? Or are you going to strongly establish the character's personality?
Well, the personality, that actually ties into how I'm going to run the system for taking options. I was going to have a sort of vaguely moral system, the options, but I'll sort of get to that. Mainly just how I'd establish the character would be sort of like the opening paragraph would sort of introduce a character, a bit of the backstory, but I'd also have like parts of the character's backstory revealed through dialogue, that sort of thing, to establish him, like through like, you know, the talking to the captain or something, because they'd know like about the person they've hired. So the players wouldn't know necessarily like everything about the character straight off, or maybe they would. It really depends how I come down to it when I get there. It's all very just. That sounds
somewhat clumsy, honestly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sort of is clumsy. It's my first attempt. It's learn what works and what doesn't, sort of.
It's no one is gonna write the perfect quest.
No, I mean,
Spuds is gonna argue with me and say a sexual encounter is the perfect quest. No one's gonna do it.
No, I mean, sexual encounter would have been the perfect quest if it had run for 30 more threads.
And I'm still content that it wouldn't have been.
But I mean, I'll probably take that on board, and then, like, you know, as you say, if that's a bit of a clumsy thing to do, or maybe I'll probably not do that. Then I'll probably like try a different way to do it. But the way I'd establish the character is I have a sort of like small backstory planned for them, where you just introduce little ideas about what happened to them in the past.
It's not it's not a bad idea in general, but I think it sounds like you have some execution to wrestle through. Some details there, which are.
The thing is,
learning how to do that.
establishing a character to flashbacks is something that I'm somewhat opposed to, because if you're gonna tell a story and pick a start, why would you immediately jump back to something that is in the past?
He wasn't going to do flashbacks. He said he was going to do dialogue. He would do establishing dialogue, which is it's a common trick in film, which is partially transferable to quests.
Yeah.
It works.
I've definitely been influenced by taking a media course at the moment. So I've definitely I watch films quite a bit, read books as well. So I've sort of been taking influence from things I like and that to try and see how that could work in questing. If it doesn't work, it'll be scrap it, move on, next idea.
All right, so just bring up past events, not actually do flashbacks.
Yeah.
Okay, then I got you.
I'd probably try and do most of the past events, at least a rough overview of the character at the very start before the first option's even given. So I'm really not breaking up the quest time to say, here's what happened to this character 20 years ago. I don't want to be doing that. But anyway, getting to what I was saying about the idea I had for a sort of risk reward system for how the players choose options. I have maybe 2 or 3 options for each post. You can pick from these, and they all have a sort of rough theme to them. You could tell which option was maybe the good thing to do, which option was maybe the ambiguous thing to do, which option was the bad thing to do, that sort of thing. But I was also going to have, maybe not for every post, or at least occasionally, a 4th option that I just sort of I wouldn't actually say what it does. It would just be labeled as wildcard. And the players could pick this option, and it would either be it would either have an amazingly good effect on the plot and the progression. It would either do something great, or it could fuck something up. So the players would have to take a gamble on whether or not it's worth just trying to plan around the options. They know what they are and how to use those to their best effect, or if it's worth taking a risk for a better option, but also possibly getting something that could fuck them up and put them in a worse position.
I mean, they tend towards mystery boxing. I mean, that's just what they only tend towards. They're going to choose the mystery box if there's a mystery box.
No, I don't think they are. I mean, mystery boxes are common options. I mean, they're disproportionately common. But if you place a lot of them, they're going to choose, I'd say, maybe 60% of the mystery boxes.
Yeah, it's again, the mystery box was sort of a inspiration for that, but also was a quest I was actually going to bring up ages ago, because I remember when we were talking about railroading, I said I had a couple of things, but I never made one point. I completely forgot for a while, but I just remembered. The other point I was going to make was a quest that was called Beware of Anticlimactic Endings. Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah, I haven't heard of the quest.
Yeah, the railroading point for that I was going to bring was how I don't think it did it well, but it had the great idea of kind of using railroading as a way to sort of express elements of the story and characters, where it's the character sort of put himself into a corner. So rather than getting options to confess things to other characters, right? He's acting very antisocial, so you just had sort of slightly different ways to be antisocial in the options. But then you would also start getting sort of meta things, which why can't I do anything else? Because it was a very meta quest. But anyway, the inspiration I kind of took from the wildcard thing from that was the very end of that quest, where the players took the most obvious bait in the universe, which was it was an option, because it was basically a meta quest where the main character knew he was in an anime, he was going through the episodes, and the last option they picked was, hey, how many episodes do we have left? Which is so painfully obvious exactly what would happen. And they still chose it.
And then the quest ended, right?
Yeah, straight after that. It was, hey,
it was called Beware of Anticlimactic Endings, you said.
Yeah, and they weren't beware. They were very unaware.
I forget which comic it was, but the point was the comic was canceled. So their idea of wrapping up the plot was just one of the characters who is fourth wall aware explained to the villain, the comic book is canceled, so your evil plan is never going to actually come to fruition and it's going to matter. And then they're like, oh.
Cheeky.
I feel
okay, pack it up, boys.
I feel like I'm not going to be able to continue for much longer, and I'm not sure I have space enough on my computer, because I've filled it up with a lot of shit. We've been running for 2 hours now, so I think it's time to wrap things up. I think everybody will do a thing where everybody tells us when they're running their next thread, and
no shilling?
And you can describe what the quest you're running a thread in as well. And after that, we'll be done, I think.
Oh, I actually prepared a list of quests to show.
Oh, I mean,
Well, my
just wait until everybody has shielded their own quest, so to speak, and then you can go.
Well, my
Alright.
quests are every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. EvaQuest runs at 8 p.m. And then what I'm also doing is a wrap up for my Gundam quest every Tuesday and Thursday. So I'm, at least until Gundam Quest is finally over and I've covered every major story arc I wanted to cover, I'm going to be running something at 8 p.m. every day of the week, unless I'm doing a podcast like this.
That's pretty. I give you props for that. That's a work ethic I can respect.
Okay.
Also, I'm writing a book.
So, Trick.
Tell us more.
No, we're wrapping up.
So the quests, so yeah, that SMT quest thing I mentioned, I'm probably gonna do like one update to that tonight. That's on like Anonkun. It's like SMT San Francisco Bay Area quest, and then tomorrow, which is Saturday for me, I'm going to be running a thread of Lost Island quest, probably for about 4 or 5 updates, probably starting sometime around like noon or 1 p.m.
Right, I think it's my turn as the last actual QM here. In 11 hours, I'm gonna run Pokemon Quest for, I don't know, 6-7 hours or something like that. And riding off that high, I'm probably gonna do a Echo de Magia quest session for Sunday. And yeah, I'm trying to run Pokemon quests every Saturday. Not sure if I can make that, but we'll try.
And I'm actually going to be running a thread. I'm going to be running a quest, either on this Sunday or the Monday after that. And I'm going to be running at. I'm going to be running something like, what would it be? 12 p.m. EST, maybe? I'm not sure. I'm going to be running like it's going to be inspired by the Remonster EX and all of the various derivatives, somewhat. But it's going to be in a war setting. And you're going to be playing as kobolds, basically, with various evolution paths inspired by various interpretations that kobolds have had in Dungeons and Dragons and in different settings over the years. And it's going to be also inspired by war documentary books like A Homage to Catalonia and some other stuff. It's going to be about basic survival things like getting enough food, getting shelter, getting clothes, and so on. And it's all going to be set in like a pseudo-Japanese society, and you'll be Ashigaru essentially. So it's a bit of a mess, but I think I can make it
Sounds
work.
interesting. It really does. Do you have a title yet?
I'm thinking Dogs of War, since kobold you start as a dogman shaped thing monster. So and you're like you're a bottom feeder in the war. So Dogs of War works on 2 different levels.
And you want everyone to immediately think of the saying.
Yes, exactly. And the saying is related to like people who prey on conflict and survive off of it. So that's sort of the theme of the quest. And you wanted to shill Mage?
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly start chilling now. For everyone who hasn't heard of it, Melius pulled a Diarca and
I should probably stop recording actually now.
Oh, just